Welcome to my presentation on generation of fighter jets. We will be discussing what are jet fighters and how are they classified. Basically, a fighter jet is a jet which is powered by a jet engine, and on the right hand side, you can see the RD-93, which is the engine used in MiG-29, which is in the picture below. The RD-93 is also the engine which is used in JF-17, which is the premier Pakistani Air Force's jet fighter. Now, how are they classified? Basically, they are classified into six generations, but we will only be discussing five generations because there is a very limited information on six generation. There is no definite time or date on which the first generation of subsonic jets began. Basically, subsonic jets are jets which are able to attain subsonic speeds at high altitude. They began from mid 1940s to 1950s. The first of the jets were introduced in the late World War II era. They had gun and cannon as the principal armaments. As you can see in the picture, we have Messerschmitt 262, which was the first jet engine air fighter introduced by the Germans. It has both jet engine and a swept wing because there was a need for to attain subsonic speeds, so this aircraft was made. So now the World War has ended in 1945, and the power play between the United States and Soviet Union led to the Cold War. So every fighter jet made between 1940s and 1950s was going to be made with the principal aim of defeating the other side. And Korean War, as you can see, which lasted from 1950 to 1953, was the first military engagement between the both blocs. So as you can see, Americans made the F-86 and Soviets made the MiG-15, both of which were evenly matched and were the principal fighters between 1940s and 1950s. So there was no clear winner between F-86 and MiG-15 during the Korean War, but the experience gained during the Korean War led to the creation of another generation of fighters such as MiG-21. As you can see, MiG-21 holds the record for being the most produced fighter jet in the world. If I sum second generation into two words, it would be nuclear triad and supersonic. Nuclear triad is the ability to launch nuclear missiles from naval, aerial, or land-based systems, while supersonic speeds are the attaining of speeds which are greater than the speed of sound. So the delta wing was a clear player and was used in Mirage and English Electric because it was able or it helped the jet to gain supersonic speeds. Supersonic jets were used as the spearhead of an squadron or an formation. Because of their speed, they could not be shot because surface-to-air missiles at that time had not been developed, which was not the case for subsonic jets. During the Indo-Pak War of 1965, both the Pakis and Indians were equipped with the supersonic jets. Pakistan was equipped with 104 and Indians were equipped with MiG-21s, which was used by the both air forces. Now the key focus point during the third generation of fighter jet was ground capabilities and air superiority capabilities. We have seen the appearance of analog avionics during the third generations. Vertical takeoff and landing and thrust vectoring were introduced, as well as aerodynamics of many jets were also improved by using flight control surfaces such as flaps, which do play an important role in fighter jets to this day. So short takeoff and landing and vertical takeoff and landing was also an capability which the third generation of aircrafts had. On the left, you can see MiG-23, which was equipped with a variable swept design, and on the right, you can see Harrier, which was equipped with vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. The MiG-23 could have had the capability to take off from a short strip and also attain a supersonic speed by sweeping its wings according to the requirement it has needed, while the Sea Harrier would take off from a aircraft carrier. All of the advancement during third generation of warplanes were put to the test during Vietnam War. The principal fighters were the F-4 and MiG-21, but neither of them had guns during the Vietnam War because it was believed that with the advancement in the missile technology, it would not be that the fighter aircrafts would get into a dogfight and will need our guns, but in reality was different from the assumption, and both of them had to use gun pods in order to fight during a dogfight. The fighter jets of four generations were a shift from analog systems to electrical systems. They were highly maneuverable machines. They were made basically keeping the concepts of energy maneuverability, which were proposed by John Boyd, which was an experienced pilot, and his experience during Vietnam War led to the development of fourth generation fighters. Many of the problems faced by the pilots during the Vietnam War were solved by the fourth generation fighters, which we will discuss another slide. Now here we have is a comparison between the cockpits of F-16 and F-4, and F-16 being a fourth generation fighter and F-4 being a third generation fighter. As you can see in the F-16 cockpit, there is a lot of order as compared to F-4. As you can see that on the top there is a green, basically a glass which is known as HUD or heads up display. This it solved the many of the problems in the F4, because in the F4, as you can see, there is a red type of glass, so the pilots had to keep looking at the glass instead of focusing on flying, which made the flying harder for the pilots. But as you can see in F15, the problems are solved using multifunctional displays and HUD, as well as the driving configuration or the flying configurations of the joysticks were made in such a way that it was easy for the pilots to fly and fight during dogfight. Most of the four-gen fighters never saw combat, but if some of them saw combat were during the end of the Cold War, during the invasion of US on Iraq. The principal fighters were F-15 and MiG-29. So after the end of Cold War, military spending was cut by many countries in order to save buck, but the fourth generation of fighters were still being upgraded to next level of their standards. They were being equipped with beyond visual range capabilities, GPS capabilities, helmet mounted sights, and data links. More advanced missiles were being introduced, which added to the deadliness of these fighters. Now we can see the cockpit and helmet mounted display of a Rafale fighter, which is a 4.5 fighter. If we compare Rafale's cockpit to F-16, it is more organized as compared to F-16. There are no analog instruments, only multifunctional displays, which do almost most of the Rafale's computation and displays most of the information, which allows to streamline the information collection to the pilot. And on the right hand side you can see the helmet mounted display, which is an important feature of 4.5 fighter jets, which allows the pilot to engage enemy fighters more easily. Now there hasn't been much conflict after the Cold War, but most of the combat that is being fought is in the form of standoffs, like the one which happened in 2019 between Pakistan and India. Both of the sides had 4.5 generation fighters. On the Pakistan side, it was F-16 Block 52, and on the Indian side, it was Su-30 MKI. Now 4.5 and 5 generation fighters had a lot of the things in common. Both have data links and passive or active array scanned array radars. Both have a low probability of intercept. Both have a very low RCS, which is radar cross section. On the fifth generation fighters, the stealth features are more incorporated. They are made of a larger quantity of composite materials, which help to reduce the radar cross section. And most of the fifth generation fighters are still under development. The only known examples which have completed their production and have entered service are F-35 and J-20. F-35 entered service in 2015 and J-20 entered service in 2018.